Imagine waking up on an ordinary day. The sun is streaming through the window. Maybe the birds are chirping. Nothing feels particularly different. You go about your routine, making breakfast, tending to your chores, perhaps chatting with neighbors. Life feels normal, predictable, even. But in 17th century Europe or colonial America, that normalcy could shatter in an instant. The whisper of a rumor, a pointed finger, a sudden accusation, that's all it took to plunge your world into darkness. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's paint a picture. It's a crisp autumn morning in Salem Village, 1692. Sarah Good, a homeless woman known for her sharp tongue and unfortunate circumstances, is wandering from door to door, begging for food. Times are hard, and many villagers are struggling to make ends meet. Sarah is often turned away, sometimes with a harsh word or a muttered curse. Later that day, young Abigail Williams, the niece of Reverend Samuel Parris, begins to exhibit strange behavior. Fits, contortions, wild screams. The village doctor is baffled. He offers a grim diagnosis. The evil hand is upon them. This single pronouncement is a spark in dry tinder. Fear, suspicion, and religious fervor have been simmering in Salem for years. Now they erupt. The afflicted girls, Abigail, her cousin Betty Parris, and a handful of other young women, become the center of attention. Their every word is scrutinized, every twitch interpreted as evidence of demonic influence. And then the accusations begin. Imagine you're Bridget Bishop, a tavern owner in Salem town. You're known for your independent spirit, your colorful clothes considered scandalous by some, and your unconventional lifestyle. Maybe you've had a few disagreements with your neighbors. Maybe you're just a little different. One day, you hear whispers. People are saying that the afflicted girls are tormented by your spectral image, that your spirit is pinching them, choking them, forcing them to sign the devil's book. Or perhaps you're Reverend George Burroughs, a Harvard-educated minister with a strong, if somewhat unorthodox, religious conviction. You've served as a minister in Salem before, but after some disagreements in salary, you left to a different congregation. Some people have felt abandoned, and now, years later, the girls scream your name as the cause of their suffering. They claim you're a wizard, consorting with the devil in the woods. The accusations are often vague, bizarre, and utterly impossible to disprove. The girls claim they see spectral figures, invisible to everyone else, tormenting them. They writhe on the floor, claiming they're being pinched, bitten, or choked by the accused. If the accused even glances in their direction, the girls erupt in screams, claiming they are being further afflicted. This spectral evidence becomes the cornerstone of the trials. And what if you were just unlucky? Perhaps you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe you had a disagreement with one of the accusers or their family. Maybe you were just an easy target, a social outcast, a newcomer, someone with no powerful protectors. The terrifying reality is that anyone could be accused. Social standing, piety, even good character offered no protection. In fact, sometimes those very qualities made you more suspect. A pious woman might be accused of using her religious knowledge for evil. A respected community leader might be accused of secretly serving the devil in order to gain power. The atmosphere in the village becomes toxic. Fear spreads like a disease. Neighbors turn against neighbors. Friends betray friends, and families are torn apart. Self-preservation becomes the driving force. To be accused is to be presumed guilty. The only way to protect yourself is to accuse others. The accusations escalate, becoming increasingly outlandish and terrifying. People claim to see animals possessed by demons, objects flying through the air by supernatural forces, and the dead rising from their graves. Hysteria grips the community. Rationality and reason are abandoned. It all begins with a feeling of unease, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Whispers replace conversations. Glances replace direct eye contact. A sense of dread settles over the community, but then it's out in the open. One day you wake up, and your life as you knew it has evaporated. It's replaced with the chilling realization you've been accused. Your neighbors, your friends, people you've known for years, now look at you with suspicion and fear. Some might shrink away, others might even actively accuse you. The accusations aren't just about you, it impacts the people around you. Your family too now have a target on their back. It's not just your reputation that's ruined, it's theirs. The life you carefully built is gone. In its place is the cold, stark reality of being accused of witchcraft. And what happens next? That seemingly normal life has transformed into a terrifying nightmare with no clear path to waking up. Because for the accused, this is only the beginning. Alright, let's drift into what it might have been like when the knock on the door came, the one that shattered everything. You see, one day you're living a life, maybe not a good life, but a life nonetheless. You're surrounded by your family, in your home, thinking about what to cook for supper or mending a torn shirt. The next, everything is upside down. Someone has pointed a finger, and the world as you know it just vanishes. The arrest. It wasn't like the movies. No dramatic showdowns, no chance to prove your innocence. Just sudden, jarring intrusion. Think about it. You're at home. Maybe it's late afternoon. The sun's starting to dip low. Your kids are playing outside, their laughter drifting through the open windows. Your husband is out in the fields, or maybe he's gone to the store with the cart, doing something, anything, but home. You are chopping vegetables perhaps for a soup, just a normal day. Then, bang 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 at the door. Not a polite rap, mind you, a pounding, a demand, a threat, even before the door swings open. You go to the door, your heart already starting to pound in your chest. Who could this be? What could they possibly want? You open the door, and there they are. Maybe it's the local constable, looking grim and uncomfortable. Maybe it's a group of men from the village, their faces hard and set. Maybe someone you know even. Either way, they're there. Their eyes hold no warmth, just a cold, assessing gaze. We have a warrant for your arrest, they say. Or maybe they don't even bother with formalities. Maybe it's just a curt, "You're coming with us." The charge, witchcraft. The most terrifying accusation imaginable. Your blood runs cold. This can't be happening. This has to be some terrible misunderstanding. But it's not. They push their way inside, their presence filling your small home, suffocating you. Your children stop playing, their eyes wide with fear. They run to you, clinging to your skirts. You try to reassure them, but your voice trembles. How can you explain something you don't understand yourself? The men don't care. They begin searching your home, tearing through your belongings. They ransack your cupboards, overturning furniture, looking for what? Proof of your evil. A witch is familiar, a spell book. There is nothing to find. The whole scene feels unreal, like a nightmare you can't wake up from. Your neighbors begin to gather outside, drawn by the commotion. Their faces are a mixture of curiosity, fear, and something else. Is it pity, or is it suspicion? You can't tell. You plead with the men, begging them to explain. What have you done? Who has accused you? They offer no answers, only cold, hard stares. You'll have your chance to explain yourself, they say. But you know deep down that it's a lie. You've already been judged. Then comes the worst part, being torn from your family. Your children are screaming, begging you not to go. Your husband arrives, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He tries to reason with the men to protect you, but it's no use. They're determined. They pull you away, your children clinging to your legs, your husband's arms reaching for you. You try to fight, to resist, but you're outnumbered. They drag you out of your home, into the street. The crowd outside is silent now, their eyes following you. You feel exposed, vulnerable, utterly alone. This is it. Your life as you knew it is over. As you're led away, you look back at your home, at your family. Their faces are etched with terror and grief. You try to smile, to offer some comfort, but tears stream down your face. You don't know if you'll ever see them again. You are taken away, leaving everything you love behind. Your home, once a safe haven, is now a scene of chaos and fear. Your family is left to pick up the pieces, to face the whispers and accusations, to wonder what will become of you. The world you knew has vanished, replaced by uncertainty and terror, all because someone, somewhere, has decided to accuse you of something you didn't do. This is how it felt to be arrested, torn from your family, and thrust into a nightmare you couldn't escape. All right, settle in, folks, because things are about to get, well, let's just say less than comfortable for our accused witch. We've covered the initial accusation and the rather abrupt, shall we say, extraction from their everyday lives. Now comes the next hurdle, a rather unpleasant one at that, the journey. But this isn't a pleasant carriage ride to the countryside. Oh no, this is a public spectacle, a carefully orchestrated display of humiliation meant to, well, let's explore, shall we? Imagine being ripped from your family, your home, everything familiar. Now picture your hands bound tightly behind your back. Not a gentle restraint, mind you, but rope digging into your skin, circulation slowly being cut off. Each step becomes a painful reminder of your captivity. Now, imagine this isn't happening in the dead of night, shrouded in secrecy. No, this is happening in broad daylight. You're paraded through your village, your town, maybe even neighboring settlements. This isn't a hushed procession either. The constables, the guards, they want people to see. They want the whispers, the stares, the pointing fingers. They want the fear, the disgust, the condemnation to be palpable. This is all part of the process, you see. It's about solidifying the community's belief in your guilt, even before any semblance of a trial. It's about isolating you, utterly and completely. Know the things they might do to you along the way. Maybe they'll force you to ride backwards on a donkey, a symbol of shame and degradation. Maybe they'll adorn you with signs proclaiming your alleged crimes. Witch, heretic, child killer. These aren't just words, they're brands, seared into your very being, in the eyes of your community. Children, bless their innocent hearts, might be encouraged to jeer, to throw stones. Neighbors who once offered smiles and greetings, now avert their gaze, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and, dare I say it, satisfaction. Perhaps they always suspected something. Perhaps they're simply relieved it's you, and not them. The journey itself could be long, arduous. Depending on the distance to the nearest jail or courthouse, you could be walking for days, sun beating down, rain soaking you to the bone, the ground rough and unforgiving beneath your bare feet or worn-out shoes. The physical discomfort is relentless, a constant reminder of your powerlessness. Sleep is scarce. Maybe you're thrown into a cart at night, jostled and bruised with every bump in the road. Maybe you're chained to a wall in a cold, damp stable, the stench of animals clinging to your clothes, your skin. Rest becomes a luxury, a distant memory. And the verbal abuse, oh, the constant stream of taunts and accusations. The guards, eager to prove their righteousness, might revel in your misery. Witch, confess your sins, repent before it's too late. They might recount lurid tales of your alleged crimes, embellishing the details, spreading rumors like wildfire. The crowds, fueled by fear and superstition, might join in the chorus. Burn her, hang her, she deserves to suffer. The venom in their voices is chilling, a stark contrast to the familiar sounds of your once peaceful community. Imagine recognizing faces in the crowd, a former friend now spitting curses, a business associate now shaking their head in disgust, even family members, perhaps torn between loyalty and fear, unable to meet your eyes. This public shaming serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it's about destroying your reputation, your standing in the community. It's about making you an outcast, a pariah. Even if you were somehow acquitted, a vanishingly small chance, mind you, your life would never be the same. the stain of accusation would linger, a constant shadow. Secondly, it's about sending a message to the rest of the community. This is what happens to those who deviate from the norm, who challenge the established order, who are deemed different. It's a chilling reminder of the power of conformity, the dangers of standing out. The journey is a carefully constructed spectacle, designed to break your spirit, to erode your will to resist. It's about making you believe, deep down, that you deserve this treatment, that you are indeed the monstrous creature they claim you to be. And by the time you finally reach your destination, the jail, the courthouse, whatever grim edifice awaits, you're already weakened, vulnerable, psychologically scarred. The humiliation has taken its toll. The journey has been a weapon, wielded with precision and cruelty. It's a reminder that witch trials weren't just about legal proceedings or confessions extracted through torture. They were about public shaming, about social control, about the power of fear and superstition to turn ordinary people into instruments of oppression. It's a dark chapter in human history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the devastating consequences of societal paranoia. The journey, my friends, was designed to break you before you even reached the jail cell. The jail cell. Even the words themselves sound final. For a witch trial victim, it wasn't just a place of temporary confinement, but a descent into a physical and emotional darkness that few could truly endure. Imagine, if you will, the air itself thick, stagnant and heavy, with the scent of mildew, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present aroma of despair. It clung to you, a suffocating blanket, a constant reminder of your captivity. Forget any romantic notions of sturdy stone walls and iron bars, at least for most. While some larger jails might have offered slightly better accommodations, most accused witches found themselves crammed into spaces barely fit for animals. Often it was just a small damp room in the local courthouse, or even a makeshift holding cell in someone's home. The walls were likely made of rough-hewn timber, gaps and cracks letting in icy drafts in the winter and sweltering heat in the summer. Forget privacy, there was none. Think about the cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold that seeped into your very marrow. In the depths of winter, particularly in places like Salem or the Scottish Highlands, the cold was a torment. You might be lucky to have a thin, threadbare blanket, but more often than not, you were left to shiver through the night, your teeth chattering uncontrollably, your limbs numb with cold. The dampness only amplified the effect, turning the cell into a breeding ground for illness. To pneumonia, consumption and other respiratory ailments were rampant, claiming the lives of many even before they faced trial. And then there was the hunger. Oh, the gnawing, relentless hunger. Food was scarce, often deliberately so. The authorities weren't exactly concerned about the well-being of those accused of consorting with the devil. You might receive a meager portion of bread and water once a day, sometimes less. The bread was often stale, mouldy, and infested with weevils. The water, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly the freshest spring water. It was often drawn from a nearby well or stream, likely contaminated with bacteria and other impurities. Imagine your stomach, constantly cramping and aching, a hollow pit of emptiness. The hunger wasn't just a physical sensation, it was a mental torment, clouding your thoughts, weakening your resolve, and making it even harder to fight the accusations against you. It was a deliberate tactic, designed to break your spirit and make you more susceptible to coercion. A starving person, after all, is far more likely to confess to anything just to get a morsel of food. Beyond the physical hardships, there was the crushing weight of despair. Imagine being torn from your family, your home, your community, and thrown into this squalid prison, accused of a crime you didn't commit, facing a trial that was rigged against you, with little to no hope of acquittal. The isolation was almost unbearable. Cut off from the outside world, you were left alone with your thoughts, your fears, and the gnawing uncertainty of your fate. The other prisoners, if there were any, offered little comfort. Some were hardened criminals, guilty of theft or other petty offenses. Others were simply unfortunate souls, caught in the web of suspicion and paranoia that gripped the community. Fear and mistrust were rampant. You never knew who to trust, who might be a spy, or who might try to curry favor with the authorities by denouncing you. Sleep, a precious escape in normal circumstances, became a torment in the jail cell. The cold, the hunger, the dampness, the hard floor, all conspired to keep you awake. Even when you did manage to drift off, nightmares plagued your sleep. Visions of the accusations, the interrogations, the trial, the gallows, they haunted your dreams, turning your sleep into a continuation of your waking torment. The days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Time lost all meaning in the confines of the cell. You lost track of the date, the day of the week, even the time of day. The only markers were the arrival of the meager rations and the occasional visits from the authorities, each one a fresh wave of fear and anxiety. Some prisoners succumbed to madness, their minds shattered by the relentless pressure. They screamed, they wept, they raved, their cries echoing through the stone walls, a chilling reminder of the fragility of the human psyche. Others simply gave up, their spirits broken, their will to live extinguished. They lay in their own filth, waiting for death to claim them, a welcome release from their suffering. And yet, even in the face of such overwhelming despair, some found the strength to resist. They clung to their faith, to their memories of loved ones, to the hope that somehow, someday, the truth would prevail. They whispered prayers, they sang hymns, they shared stories of their lives, finding solace in their shared humanity. It was a fragile flame, easily extinguished, but it burned nonetheless, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Music slowly begins to fade out. The jail cell, a place of cold, hunger, and despair, but also a place where the human spirit was tested to its limits, where the line between sanity and madness blurred, and where, even in the darkest of times, hope flickered like a dying ember, a stark reminder of the human cost of fear, paranoia, and injustice. Okay, so you're finally here. You've been dragged, probably kicking and screaming, from your normal life and thrown into this mess. You're scared, confused, and honestly, probably just really tired, and that's exactly what they want. Welcome to the interrogation. Now forget everything you think you know about questioning. This isn't some polite conversation, searching for truth. This is a game, a brutal, unfair game, where the rules are made up as they go along, and you, my friend, are the pawn. First, understand who you're up against. It could be a local magistrate, puffed up with self-importance and eager to prove his righteousness. It could be a traveling witch finder, a charlatan preying on fear and superstition, or it could just be your neighbors, fueled by gossip, envy, and a terrifying desire to fit in. Whoever it is, remember this, they've already decided you're guilty. The interrogation isn't about finding out the truth, it's about extracting a confession. So how do they do it? Well, let's start with the lies. Oh, the lies. They'll tell you that others have already confessed and named you. Goody Proctor has already admitted her part in the devil's dance and says you were right there with her. Pure fabrication, of course. Goody Proctor hasn't said a word, or maybe she has, but only after hours of relentless pressure. But the seed of doubt is planted. You start to wonder, is everyone turning against you? They might tell you they have irrefutable evidence, spectral evidence of you tormenting someone, strangling them in their sleep, appearing as a ghostly apparition. Young Abigail saw your spirit choking her in the courtroom. Are you going to deny the word of a child touched by God? Spectral evidence was a loophole, a nightmare. It was proof that didn't require proof. How can you defend yourself against something unseen, something that exists only in the fevered imagination of a frightened or manipulative child? And then there are the threats. Subtle at first, a gentle nudge, confess, and the Lord will have mercy on your soul, implying, of course, that they won't. Then they escalate. Think of your family. What will happen to your children if you are found guilty? They'll be cast out, branded as the offspring of a witch. Your heart clenches. Your children, they are your everything. Are you willing to sacrifice their future for your silence? The threats get more direct, more personal. They might threaten to seize your property, leaving your family destitute. They might threaten to imprison your spouse, accusing them of complicity. Or worst of all, they might hint at the special methods they have for extracting confessions. Methods whispered about in hushed tones, methods that involve sleepless nights, starvation, and other things. And then the pressure builds. They'll isolate you, keep you from seeing your family, your friends, anyone who might offer comfort or support. Days bleed into nights. You lose track of time. The same questions, the same accusations, repeated over and over and over. It's psychological torture, designed to wear you down, to break your spirit. They'll exploit your weaknesses, your fears. If you're devout, they'll twist scripture, quoting passages out of context to make you doubt your faith. If you're educated, they'll mock your intelligence, claiming your learning is just a tool of the devil. If you're poor, they'll accuse you of envy and resentment, of using witchcraft to gain what you couldn't earn honestly. The goal is to create a sense of hopelessness, a feeling that resistance is futile. They want you to believe that everyone is against you, that confession is the only way out. And slowly, insidiously, it starts to work. You begin to question your own sanity. Maybe, just maybe, you did do something. Maybe you are guilty. You start to think about confessing. Just a little, just enough to make them stop. You tell yourself it's a lie, a necessary lie to protect your family, to save your own life. But the line between truth and falsehood begins to blur. You start to remember things that never happened, to invent details to make your story more believable. The interrogators pounce on this. They guide you, suggest things, feed you information. Tell us about the black cat. Was it familiar, sent by the devil? You hesitate, but the image of a black cat flashes in your mind. You describe it, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Yes, it had green eyes, and it spoke to me in a raspy voice. And just like that, you're trapped. You've created a fiction, a web of lies that grows more tangled with each passing hour. The interrogators record every word, twisting your statements, misinterpreting your intentions. The confession becomes a monster, a grotesque caricature of your life, your beliefs, your very soul. You've given them what they wanted, a confession. But it's a false confession, born of fear, exhaustion, and the relentless pressure of the interrogation, and it will seal your fate. Because in this twisted world, a confession, no matter how coerced, no matter how untrue, is all the proof they need. You confessed, you are guilty. Now what? All right, settle in close, friends. After the shock of being accused, the terror of arrest, and the humiliation of being paraded through town, they get so much worse. We're going to talk about how the authorities broke supposed witches, not with physical torture, not right away, but with something almost more insidious: sleep deprivation and sensory overload. It's a subtle torture, but incredibly effective, and honestly, it's something we still see used today. Imagine being dragged into a cold, damp cell. Maybe it's stone, maybe it's just roughly hewn wood. The air is thick with the smell of mildew, unwashed bodies, and, well, you don't want to know. You're already exhausted, emotionally shattered, but sleep feels impossible. That's precisely the point. They want you disoriented. They want you vulnerable. Sleep deprivation isn't just about making you tired, it rewires your brain. After a few days of little to no sleep, your judgment crumbles. Your memory becomes unreliable. You start to hallucinate. Reality itself bends and warps. This wasn't just random cruelty, folks. It was a calculated strategy. Accusers believed that witches drew power from the devil, and that confession would only come by breaking this alliance. What better way to break a bond than by stripping away everything familiar, everything grounding? Now add to this the sensory overload. Imagine being constantly surrounded by noise, not just the general cacophony of a prison. The moans of the sick, the sobs of the despairing, the shouts of the guards, but specifically directed noise. Sometimes it's the guards themselves, deliberately banging on the cell doors at all hours. A sudden jarring crash that snaps you awake from a fitful doze. Other times it's the interrogators, pacing, yelling accusations, whispering threats. The constant barrage of words, accusations and demands becomes a form of psychological assault. And then there's the visual assault. Constant flickering torchlight, throwing grotesque shadows on the walls. Being forced to stare at objects associated with witchcraft. Things meant to scare you and remind you of the accusations, poppets, herbs, strange symbols drawn on the walls. Even if you aren't a witch, the relentless suggestion plants seeds of doubt in your mind. You begin to question everything. Consider the colors too. Stark contrasts, perhaps. The drab grey of your prison clothes against the bright red of an inquisitor's robes. The overwhelming sense of being watched, constantly scrutinized. This is a world designed to overwhelm your senses and the touch, or lack thereof. You might be kept in restraints for days on end, the ropes biting into your skin, cutting off circulation, or conversely, subjected to intrusive and unwanted touching under the guise of searching for devil's marks. The invasion of your personal space, the denial of control over your own body. It's all part of the process of dehumanization. Even your diet contributes to the sensory overload. Bland, unappetizing food, often spoiled or barely edible. The same watery gruel, day after day. No spices, no flavors, nothing to offer a moment of comfort. Just enough to keep you alive, but not enough to nourish your spirit. The cumulative effect of sleep deprivation and sensory overload is devastating. It breaks down your resistance. It erodes your sense of self. It makes you susceptible to suggestion. After days of this, you're no longer thinking clearly. You are desperate for relief, and your interrogators know it. They'll use that desperation against you. They'll offer you a way out, a promise of comfort, if only you confess. And after days of sleeplessness, noise and fear, confession starts to seem like the only option. It's not about guilt or innocence, truth or lies. It's about survival. Your survival. Your mind becomes a battlefield. Reality becomes a distant memory. Think of it like this. Your mind is a fortress. Sleep is the drawbridge, allowing supplies to come in and waste to go out. Sensory input is the enemy's siege weapons, pounding against the walls. Deprive the fortress of sleep. Bombard it with relentless stimulation, and eventually, the walls will crumble. The defenders, your sanity, your memory, your sense of self, will be overwhelmed. And that's when the real interrogation begins. When they know they've broken you down, that you're ready to say anything to make it stop. This is how innocent people were coerced into confessing to impossible crimes. This is how fear and suspicion transformed ordinary lives into tragic tales. It's important to remember this, folks. It's easy to dismiss witch trials as the product of a primitive, superstitious age, but the techniques used to break these women, sleep deprivation, sensory overload, psychological manipulation, are still used today in prisons, in interrogation rooms, in cults, in abusive relationships. Recognizing these tactics, understanding how they work, is crucial to preventing them from being used against others, because even in our supposedly enlightened age, the human mind is still vulnerable, and the forces that seek to exploit that vulnerability are still very much alive. And that, my friends, is a truly chilling thought. Okay, so you've been accused of witchcraft. Not a great start to your week, right? But you're thinking, okay, I'm innocent. This is going to be cleared up quickly. Sadly, you're in for a very rude awakening. The justice system, and I use that term very loosely, is about to show you just how stacked the deck really is. It's less about truth and fairness, and more about fulfilling a predetermined narrative. Let's just say, you're not exactly presumed innocent. First, the legal loopholes. Oh, there are plenty. Remember, these trials weren't exactly governed by a clear set of rules. In fact, many of the laws were vague, contradictory, or simply made up on the spot to fit the accusations. It's like playing a game where the rules change whenever the other player is losing, and they're the referee. One of the biggest problems: hearsay. In a modern court, hearsay is generally inadmissible. It's second-hand information, unreliable, and prone to distortion. But in a witch trial, hearsay was basically prime-time evidence. My neighbor said she saw the accused muttering something under her breath. Guilty. Someone overheard her arguing with a cow, and now the cow's milk is sour. Witchcraft. It didn't matter how flimsy or far-fetched the claim was. As long as someone said it, it carried weight. Basically, playground gossip had the power to condemn you to death. Then there's the issue of evidence, or rather, the lack of it. Forget forensic science, forget DNA, forget even basic investigation. The evidence was often circumstantial, based on superstition, or just plain ridiculous. Things like birthmarks, moles, or any unusual physical feature could be interpreted as the devil's mark, proof of a pact with evil. If you had a wart on your nose, you were practically halfway to the gallows. It's like your body was providing the prosecutors all the excuses to convict you. And speaking of evidence, the tests they used were utterly absurd. The most famous, perhaps, was the swimming test. They'd tie you up, hands and feet, and throw you into a body of water. If you floated, you were deemed guilty. The logic, apparently, was that pure water would reject someone who had made a pact with the devil. If you sank, you were innocent, but also probably drowned. So either way, the outlook was not good. It's a bit like being asked, "Have you stopped beating your wife?" There is no answer that gets you out of there unscathed. But the real kicker? The biased judges. Oh, these weren't impartial arbiters of justice, carefully weighing the evidence and ensuring a fair trial. Instead, you had judges who were often deeply prejudiced, convinced of the existence of witches, and eager to see them punished. Many were driven by religious zeal, believing they were doing God's work by rooting out evil. Others were motivated by political ambition, eager to gain favor with the community by appearing tough on witches. Some were simply incompetent, lacking any real legal training or experience. Imagine putting your life in the hands of someone who barely understands the law, but strongly believes you're in league with Satan. It's a recipe for disaster. The judges often actively encouraged the accusations, prompting witnesses to testify against the accused, leading the questioning in ways that confirmed their suspicions, and dismissing any evidence that might suggest innocence. It was less a trial and more a preordained execution, with the judge acting as the master of ceremonies. And let's not forget the role of personal vendettas. Witch trials weren't always about genuine fear of the supernatural. Often they were a convenient way to settle old scores, eliminate rivals, or seize property. Did you have a feud with your neighbor? Accuse them of witchcraft. Did you want to get your hands on someone's land? Accuse them of witchcraft. The system was ripe for abuse, and many people took full advantage of it. It's as if everyone was given permission to act on their worst instincts, cloaked in the guise of righteous indignation. You might be thinking, surely there were lawyers who could defend the accused. Well, not really. In many cases, the accused weren't even allowed legal representation. They were forced to defend themselves, often against skilled prosecutors who knew how to manipulate the system. And even if a lawyer was allowed, they faced an uphill battle. Defending someone accused of witchcraft was a dangerous proposition. It could make you look sympathetic to the devil and potentially put you in the dock. So what are you left with? A system designed to convict, not to seek the truth. A system where hearsay is evidence, superstition is fact, and biased judges act as executioners. It's a legal nightmare, a perversion of justice, and you're trapped right in the middle of it. And things, sadly, are about to get a whole lot worse. So we've talked about the intense pressure put on the accused, the methods used to extract confessions, and how easily those confessions could be twisted. But what about the other side of the coin? What about the people pointing the finger? In witch trials, the testimony of witnesses was absolutely crucial, but often these weren't objective observers. They were people with their own agendas, their own fears, and sometimes their own outright lies to tell, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Think about it. In a small, tightly knit community, everyone knows everyone's business. Old grudges fester, land disputes simmer, and jealousies bubble beneath the surface, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. A witch trial could be the perfect opportunity to settle those scores, to get rid of someone you didn't like, or to climb the social ladder by aligning yourself with the powerful, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Now, let's be clear, not every witness was malicious. Some were genuinely convinced they'd seen or experienced something supernatural. Fear is a powerful motivator, and in an environment of heightened anxiety, people are prone to misinterpret things, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. A strange illness in the family, a run of bad luck, a cow giving sour milk. Any of these could be attributed to witchcraft, especially if someone already seemed a bit different, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. But even genuine belief could be warped by the interrogation process. Imagine being questioned repeatedly, under pressure, about what you saw. The authorities already have a suspect in mind. Subtly, or not so subtly, they guide your memory, suggesting details, planting ideas. Soon you're remembering things that never actually happened, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. The power of suggestion is immense, especially when you're dealing with people who are already scared and confused, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. And then there were the outright liars. These were the people who saw a witch trial as a chance to get ahead, to settle a score, or simply to enjoy the attention, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Perhaps a neighbor had insulted them, or maybe they coveted a piece of land. Accusing that person of witchcraft was a convenient way to eliminate the competition, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Sometimes the motivation was even more personal. Imagine a young woman, scorned by a suitor, seeking revenge. Accusing him of bewitching her, of causing her pain and suffering, was a way to publicly humiliate him and ruin his reputation, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Or consider a family feud, generations old, erupting in accusations of witchcraft, each side accusing the other of dark magic and devilry, fueled by years of bitterness and resentment, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. The social dynamics of these accusations are fascinating and terrifying. Often the accusers were young women, sometimes teenagers. In a patriarchal society, they had limited power, limited agency. Accusing someone of witchcraft gave them a voice, a way to exert influence, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Suddenly their words mattered. They were the center of attention, their stories eagerly consumed by the community, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Of course, this power was fleeting and dangerous. If their accusations were challenged, if they couldn't provide convincing evidence, they could find themselves under suspicion, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. The accuser could quickly become the accused. The stakes were incredibly high, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. And what constituted evidence? That's where things get really murky. Often it was simply hearsay, gossip, or personal opinions, dressed up as facts, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. She always mumbles to herself. Someone might say, "I saw her talking to a black cat. My child fell ill after she looked at him." None of these things were proof of witchcraft, but in the context of a witch trial, they could be incredibly damaging, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. The testimony of children was particularly problematic. Young children are easily influenced, easily frightened, and prone to flights of fancy, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Yet their words were often taken as gospel, even when they contradicted themselves or offered obviously impossible accounts, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Think about the power dynamic at play. A child, intimidated by authority figures, eager to please, might say whatever they thought the adults wanted to hear, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Or they might simply be repeating stories they'd heard from other children, embellishing them along the way, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. The Salem witch trials are a prime example of this. Many of the initial accusations came from a group of young girls who claimed to be afflicted by witchcraft. Their dramatic fits, their accusations, their supposed visions, all of this fueled the hysteria and led to the imprisonment and execution of innocent people, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Later, some of these girls admitted they had been lying, that they had been motivated by boredom, attention-seeking, and a desire to control the adults around them, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. But by then the damage was done, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. So when we talk about the testimony of witnesses in witch trials, we need to remember the context. We need to remember the social pressures, the personal agendas, the power dynamics, and the ever-present fear that could warp perception and drive people to say and do things they might never have considered otherwise, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. It's a reminder that truth is often a fragile thing, easily manipulated, especially in times of crisis and fear, all said in a soft, sleepy tone, and that the consequences of those manipulations can be devastating, all said in a soft, sleepy tone. Alright, settle in folks. We're gonna wade into some murky waters now. Imagine you're accused of witchcraft. The evidence against you, not something you did, not something anyone saw you do, but something else, something unseen, something spectral. Spectral evidence. Sounds spooky, right? Well, for the people on the receiving end of it, it was terrifying. See, during the witch trials, particularly in places like Salem, Massachusetts, the courts started accepting testimony about visions and dreams as proof of guilt. That's right, someone could claim they saw your spirit, your spectral form, tormenting them in a dream, and that could be enough to put you in jail or worse. Think about the implications of that for a second. How do you defend yourself against something that exists only in someone else's mind? How do you prove you didn't pinch someone's spectral arm when in reality you were sound asleep in your own bed? You can't. That's the point. This evidence was usually presented by the afflicted, young women mostly, who would exhibit strange behaviors, fits, contortions, and claim to be tormented by the spirits of witches. During trials they would often writhe, scream, and point at the accused, claiming they were being attacked right then, right there by the defendant's spectre. The court, swayed by the hysteria and the seemingly genuine distress of the afflicted, often accepted this as legitimate proof. It's not like they had CSI Salem, they didn't have a way to disprove it. Now, where did this idea of spectral evidence come from? It wasn't entirely new. Belief in the power of spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, was deeply ingrained in the Puritan worldview. They believed the devil was real, and that he could use witches as his agents to wreak havoc on the world. And that was pretty much the fuel that kept this whole insane train a-rollin'. Cotton Mather, a prominent Puritan minister and intellectual, actually wrote about spectral evidence in his book, Memorable Providences Relating to Witchcrafts and Possessions. He was, shall we say, cautious about it. He acknowledged the possibility that the devil could deceive people, that he could impersonate innocent individuals in visions. So even Mather, who absolutely believed in witches, was a little wary of relying solely on spectral testimony. I guess the dude had his limits. But here's the kicker. Mather also believed that if the afflicted could consistently identify a specific individual as their tormentor, and if that individual had a bad reputation or was otherwise suspected of witchcraft, then the spectral evidence was likely valid. So basically, if people already didn't like you, you were screwed, and that's exactly what happened. Spectral evidence became a tool for settling scores, for getting rid of unwanted neighbors, for airing out old grievances. All it took was a few accusations, a few fits and screams, and a reputation already tarnished by gossip or suspicion. It created a climate of fear and paranoia. People were afraid to speak their minds, afraid to disagree with anyone, afraid to even look at the afflicted the wrong way, lest they become the next target. Neighbors turned on each other. Families were torn apart, and all because of visions and dreams. Imagine living like that. The truly tragic thing is that many of the accused were vulnerable members of society, women who were poor, elderly, or outspoken, people who didn't conform to societal norms. They were easy targets, and spectral evidence made it incredibly easy to condemn them. The problem with spectral evidence isn't just that it was based on subjective experiences, it's that it was unfalsifiable. There was no way to test it, no way to verify it, no way to prove or disprove it. It was purely based on belief, on the word of the afflicted, and on the biases and prejudices of the community. It was in the truest sense a perversion of justice. Eventually the use of spectral evidence was challenged. Some judges and ministers began to question its reliability, pointing out the obvious potential for deception and manipulation. The tide started to turn, and in 1692, Governor William Phips ordered that spectral evidence no longer be admissible in court. It was a turning point in the Salem witch trials. Without spectral evidence, the convictions became much harder to obtain, and the hysteria began to subside. It's like once the oxygen was taken away, this fire just started dying, but the damage was done. By the time the trials ended, dozens of people had been wrongly convicted and executed, and countless others had suffered imprisonment, humiliation, and the destruction of their lives. And all because of the unseen, the spectral, the unprovable. The legacy of spectral evidence serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, the power of suggestion, and the importance of critical thinking. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of justice and the ease with which it can be corrupted by fear and prejudice. So sleep tight, folks, but maybe keep an eye on those dreams. You never know what evidence they might produce. All right, settle in, because this part gets rough. We've talked about the accusations, the jail, the interrogation, but what happens when they really want you to confess? We're talking about torture. Now I know, it's a hard subject to hear about, but it's crucial to understanding the experience of a witch trial victim. It wasn't just about proving guilt. It was about extracting a confession that would validate the whole horrifying process. Think about it. You're already broken, sleep-deprived, malnourished, terrified. They've isolated you, questioned you relentlessly, twisted your words. Now they introduce pain, not just any pain, but carefully calibrated pain designed to break your will. See, the goal wasn't just to inflict suffering, it was to control you, to reshape your reality. The pain became a tool, a language, and in that language the only thing that mattered was confessing. What kind of torture? Well, it varied depending on the time and place, but some methods were disturbingly common. There was sleep deprivation, this we've mentioned, but extended to almost comical degrees. Days, sometimes weeks, without rest. You'd hallucinate, your mind would play tricks on you, it wouldn't take much to crack. Then starvation, and also its inverse, being forced to eat rotten or repulsive food. How about sleep deprivation and starvation? I guess that would break anyone pretty quick. Then the physical stuff. The rack, for instance, your limbs tied to rollers, slowly stretched until your joints dislocate, weights attached to your feet while you're suspended, thumb screws, crushing your thumbs, or sometimes your toes, one of the worst pains there is. The strappado, hoisted by your wrists tied behind your back, then dropped, dislocating your shoulders. Imagine that. Over and over, it's so cruel. And then there were the psychological tortures. See, these were often mixed with the physical. Being stripped naked and publicly examined for witches' marks, things that might have just been birthmarks. Humiliation was a key ingredient. Being forced to watch others being tortured, the person next to you in jail, maybe even a loved one, or being threatened with torture, the details described in vivid detail. Your mind would be racing, trying to imagine the pain, already feeling it before they even laid a hand on you. The thing is, these tortures weren't necessarily about getting true confessions. They knew that the confessions extracted under duress were likely false, but that didn't matter. The confession itself was the point. It was about power, about control. It validated the accusers, the judges, the whole system. It showed the community that the authorities were doing something, fighting back against this supposed evil. And the confessions, oh, they were wild. Remember, these people were exhausted, terrified, and often mentally broken, so they would say anything to make the pain stop. They confessed to flying on broomsticks, to making pacts with the devil, to killing livestock, to cursing their neighbors. They described elaborate Sabbaths, with dancing, feasting, and orgies, all fueled by the torturer's prompts. Prompts that would lead the tortured on the right path, to provide the confession needed. And it's not as simple as just being physically strong or tough. The pressure to confess wasn't just about physical pain. It was about the complete dismantling of your identity. Your beliefs, your memories, your sense of self, they were all under attack. Your body would break too, I guess. The torturers were often skilled manipulators, exploiting your fears, your vulnerabilities. They might promise leniency, even freedom, if you confessed. Then they'd recant on their promise, make you sign something, and it would be used against you. They might play on your religious beliefs, twisting scripture to convince you that you were serving God by confessing. Or they might appeal to your love for your family, threatening to harm them if you didn't cooperate. And what could you say to that? The sheer relentlessness of the pressure is what broke most people. It wasn't just one session of torture. It was days, weeks, even months of constant questioning, sleep deprivation, and physical and psychological torment. It was a war of attrition, and you were fighting it with a broken body and a shattered mind. The world would be gone. The point is, a confession extracted under torture is meaningless. It tells us nothing about whether someone was actually a witch. It only tells us about the incredible power of coercion, the depths of human cruelty, and the lengths to which people will go to escape unbearable suffering. It paints a picture of a person so battered, broken, and manipulated that the real person is gone. It's a dark chapter in human history, this use of torture to extract confessions. It reminds us that even in the name of justice, terrible things can be done, and it serves as a cautionary tale, a warning against the dangers of fear, prejudice, and the abuse of power. These witch trials are so terrible, and yet it is so important to understand. Now let's take a deep breath and keep going. The confession, a desperate act of survival. After days, maybe weeks, of relentless interrogation, of sleep deprivation that warps your perception, of the bone-chilling fear that never quite leaves you, the pressure to confess becomes unbearable. You're teetering on the edge of sanity, your mind a swirling vortex of accusations, threats, and desperate pleas. You know that everything they're saying is a lie, a twisted fabrication designed to break you, but your body is weak, your mind is weaker, and the promise of respite, even if it's a false promise, becomes intoxicating. Think of it this way. Imagine being held captive, not physically, but mentally. Your thoughts are no longer your own. Every time you try to grasp onto a memory, a truth, it slips through your fingers like sand. The interrogators, they're not interested in the truth. They have a narrative, a story they want you to tell, and they'll use every trick in the book to force you to comply. They isolate you, deprive you of sleep, constantly accuse you, never letting up. This isn't a calm, rational discussion. This is psychological warfare. And sometimes they add physical torture, not always the graphic, bone-crushing kind you see in movies, although that certainly happened. More often, it was the subtle, insidious kind, binding you in uncomfortable positions for hours, depriving you of food and water, pricking you with needles, or using sleep deprivation to bring you to the brink of madness. It was designed to erode your will, to wear you down until you were willing to say anything, to make it stop. The confession itself is a carefully constructed document. It's not your words, it's their words meticulously crafted to fit their narrative. They feed you details, leading questions, suggestions disguised as facts. They ask you about Sabbaths, about flying through the night, about consorting with the devil, and if you resist, the pressure intensifies. And here's the insidious part: they might mix in elements of your own life, twisting them into something sinister. A pet cat becomes a familiar spirit. A misunderstood argument with a neighbor becomes evidence of a curse. A natural remedy you used for a sick child becomes a poisonous concoction brewed with dark magic. You begin to doubt your own memories. Are you really innocent? Could you have unknowingly succumbed to the devil's influence? The constant questioning plants seeds of doubt, eroding your sense of self. You start to believe their lies, at least on some level. Then comes the moment of surrender. It might be a whisper, a nod, a barely audible yes, but it's enough. You've broken. You've given them what they want, and in that moment, a strange sense of calm washes over you. The pressure is gone, the accusations cease. You're no longer fighting, you're complying, but this isn't a victory, it's a Pyrrhic surrender. You've traded one form of torment for another. You know that this confession, this fabricated story, will seal your fate. But in that moment, immediate survival trumps everything else. You'll worry about the consequences later. Right now, you just want the pain to stop, and so you sign the confession. You swear to its truth, knowing that every word is a lie. You implicate others, naming names of people you barely know, or people you once considered friends. You do it all to save yourself, or at least to delay the inevitable. The psychological weight of this act is crushing. You've betrayed your own beliefs, your own integrity. You've condemned yourself, and potentially others. The guilt gnaws at you, a constant reminder of your weakness. But there's also a flicker of hope, a desperate clinging to the belief that somehow you can recant your confession, that you can convince them of your innocence. But that hope is quickly extinguished. Once you've confessed, you're trapped. The machinery of the witch trial grinds forward, and you're caught in its gears. You might think, why didn't they just refuse to confess? Why didn't they stand their ground? It's easy to say that from the comfort of our modern lives. But imagine the conditions they faced: the isolation, the sleep deprivation, the constant bombardment of accusations, the ever-present threat of torture, and the lack of any real legal recourse. And remember, they were people, just like you and me, capable of breaking under immense pressure. It was a desperate act of survival, a tragic choice made in impossible circumstances, and one that ultimately sealed their fate. It's a reminder of the fragility of the human mind, and the lengths to which people will go when pushed to the absolute brink. Alright, so, imagine you've been accused of witchcraft. You've gone through the interrogation, the accusations, and the pressure. Maybe you even confessed to things you didn't do. Now you're just waiting. But where are you waiting? That's right, imprisonment. The jail cell. It's not quite what you'd think of as a jail cell today. Forget clean linens and 3 square meals. This is a stone room, cold and damp. The air hangs heavy with the smell of mildew, of human waste, and of despair. A rough-hewn wooden door, reinforced with iron, is your only portal to the outside world. And that door, it doesn't exactly swing open with cheerful visits. Sunlight, a distant memory. Maybe a sliver manages to sneak in through a high, barred window, if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's the flickering light of a single candle, provided sparingly, that dances on the damp stone walls, painting grotesque shadows that seem to mock your sanity. And the isolation. Oh, the isolation is a beast all its own. You're cut off from your family, your friends, your community. The familiar sounds of daily life, the laughter of children, the clatter of the market, the comforting rhythm of your own home, they fade into a distant echo, replaced by the dripping of water, the scuttling of rats, and the gnawing silence. Days bleed into nights, indistinguishable from one another. Time loses all meaning. You try to keep track, maybe scratching marks on the wall with a shard of stone, but even that becomes a futile exercise. What difference does it make anyway? The lack of human contact, it's excruciating. Maybe a guard will toss you a hunk of stale bread, or a bucket of water, once a day. But words are rare, and kindness even rarer. You might try to speak, to plead your innocence, to ask for news of your family. But your pleas are met with stony silence, or a gruff warning to be quiet. Slowly, insidiously, the isolation begins to chip away at your sanity. Your thoughts become your enemies. Doubts creep in, whispering insidious suggestions. Did you perhaps unknowingly consort with evil? Were those strange occurrences, that illness in the livestock, that string of bad luck, were they your fault? The accusations, the interrogations, they replay in your mind over and over again. The lies, the threats, the forced confessions, they twist and distort until you can no longer distinguish truth from falsehood. You start to question everything you thought you knew, everything you believed. Your memories become unreliable, your perceptions distorted. You see faces in the shadows, hear voices in the silence. Sleep offers no escape. Nightmares plague your rest, filled with grotesque figures, accusing voices, and the terrifying image of the gallows. You wake up sweating, heart pounding, unsure if what you experienced was real or just a figment of your fevered imagination. The lack of stimulation, it's maddening. There's nothing to read, nothing to distract you, nothing to occupy your mind. You stare at the walls, tracing the lines of the stones, counting the cracks, searching for some sign, some meaning, anything to break the monotony. Your senses become heightened, then dulled. The smallest sound, a creaking door, a scratching rat, sends your heart racing. But after days, weeks, months of sensory deprivation, your mind begins to shut down. You become numb, detached, unresponsive. You lose interest in your appearance, in your hygiene, in everything that once mattered to you. You stop washing, stop combing your hair, stop caring. You become a shell of your former self, a ghost haunting your own existence. And the hunger, the gnawing, persistent hunger. The rations are meager, barely enough to sustain life. The bread is stale and moldy, the water foul-tasting. You dream of food, of warm bread, of ripe fruit, of a hearty meal shared with your family. But the dreams only intensify the reality of your deprivation. You become obsessed with food, thinking about it constantly, craving it with every fiber of your being. You start to hoard your meager rations, saving crumbs for later, rationing every drop of water. The hunger weakens your body, makes you susceptible to illness. You cough, you shiver, you ache. But there's no doctor, no medicine, no comfort. You're left to suffer in silence, praying for an end to your misery. And through it all, the fear persists. The fear of the unknown, the fear of what awaits you, the fear of death. You know that the trial is a farce, that the verdict is already decided. You know that you're likely to be condemned, to be hanged, to be burned. But even knowing that, you cling to hope, a desperate, fragile hope that maybe, somehow, you'll be saved. Maybe someone will believe you, someone will intervene, someone will set you free. But as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, that hope begins to dwindle. You start to accept your fate, to resign yourself to your destiny. You prepare yourself for the end, praying for strength, for courage, for forgiveness. The imprisonment, it's not just a physical confinement, it's a mental and emotional prison as well. It's a place where hope dies, where sanity unravels, where the human spirit is slowly, relentlessly crushed. It's a place where you lose yourself, where you become someone or something you no longer recognize. It's a taste of hell on earth. Okay, so you know how, after something really awful happens, like really awful, everyone around you kinda shifts, like they're looking at you differently, even if they don't mean to. Yeah, that's what it was like after the accusation. It was like a slow, creeping cold, spreading through the whole town, and I was the center of it. See, back then, fear was, well, it was a part of everyday life. But this was a different kind of fear. This wasn't fear of the unknown, like a bad harvest or a sudden illness. This was fear of something unseen. Something whispering in the shadows, and that fear, it was contagious. People I'd known my whole life, people I'd shared meals with, helped in their fields, watched their children grow, they started avoiding me. At first it was subtle, a quick glance away when our eyes met, a mumbled greeting instead of a friendly chat, but it escalated. Suddenly my presence at the market became unwelcome. The other women would huddle together, their voices dropping to whispers as I approached. They'd clutch their children closer, like I was carrying some kind of disease. And it wasn't just the women. The men too started treating me differently. They'd avoid making eye contact, or they'd give me these suspicious looks, like they were trying to see past my face, into my soul, searching for something dark. And God, it was exhausting. Trying to act normal, trying to pretend I didn't notice, when all I wanted to do was curl up and disappear. Remember, this was a time when the devil was seen as very real. He wasn't just some abstract idea, you know. He was believed to be actively working in the world, trying to corrupt good Christians. And witches, well, they were seen as his soldiers, doing his bidding, right here among us. So if someone was accused of witchcraft, it wasn't just a crime, it was a sign of contamination, a danger to the whole community. And so people started isolating me. It wasn't an official decree or anything, but no one wanted to be seen associating with me. If you were friendly with a witch, well, people might start to suspect you. It was a matter of survival, really, self-preservation. But it was also incredibly lonely. I remember one day, I went to the church, my church, where I'd worshipped my whole life, and I tried to sit in my usual pew. But the family who always sat beside me, they moved. They packed up their things and moved to the other side of the church. Right then I knew I was alone, truly alone. And then came the ostracism. It wasn't just avoidance, but it turned into active exclusion. I was no longer invited to gatherings, to quilting bees, to anything really. My neighbors stopped asking for my help, even when they knew I was the best one to ask for a certain skill. It was like I'd become invisible. Except I wasn't invisible. I was marked. This was before the trial, mind you. This was just the reaction. The community deciding, long before any judge or jury, that I was guilty. And it's funny, isn't it? Because they didn't know. They didn't have any proof. They just assumed, based on whispers and rumors, on fear, well, probably a little bit of gossip too. I lost my livelihood. People refused to buy my goods because they were afraid. Afraid of what? I don't know exactly. Maybe they thought I'd cursed them. Maybe they thought buying from me would somehow taint them. All I knew was, I couldn't make a living. My family started to go hungry. And the more desperate we became, the more suspicious people were. It was a vicious cycle. Even my friends started distancing themselves. Not all of them, thank goodness. There were a few, a precious few, who still offered a kind word, a secret smile, a small act of kindness, when no one was looking. But they couldn't be seen associating with me openly. It was too dangerous for them. They had families to protect, reputations to maintain. And I understood, truly, I did. But God, it hurt. This was the hardest part, you know. Not the fear, not the hunger, not even the accusation itself. It was the loss of community, the feeling of being severed from everything I knew and loved. To be seen as a threat, an outcast, a monster, by the very people I'd always considered my neighbors, my friends, my family. It's a kind of pain I can barely describe. It's a pain that hollows you out, leaves you feeling empty and alone. And the worst part, it all happened so quickly. One day, I was a respected member of the community. The next, I was a pariah. And all because of a whisper, a lie, a fear that spiraled out of control and consumed everything in its path. It felt as though the world I knew crumbled around me while I watched helplessly. And the silence. Oh, the silence was deafening. Okay, let's talk about what happens when the accusation sticks, when the whispers become shouts and the fear turns into tangible loss. It's easy to imagine the terror of the trial, the threat of torture, or the agonizing death. But what about the slow, creeping destruction of everything you've built? What about the ruin of your reputation and the destitution that follows a witch trial, whether you're found guilty or, unbelievably, acquitted? It's a shadow that stretches far beyond the courtroom. Imagine you're a skilled weaver, known throughout your village for your intricate tapestries and warm woolen blankets. Your livelihood, your identity, is tied to your craft. You've spent years honing your skills, building relationships with suppliers, and earning the trust of your customers. You're not rich, but you're respected, you're comfortable, and you're secure. Then the accusation hits. Suddenly, people cross the street to avoid you. Neighbors who once eagerly sought your work now whisper behind cupped hands. Orders dry up. Yarn suppliers refuse to sell to you, fearing association. Your reputation, once a source of pride and income, becomes a scarlet letter, a brand of suspicion that isolates you. This wasn't just about lost income, although that was certainly devastating. It was about the loss of social standing, the erasure of your identity. In a time when community was everything, to be ostracized was a form of social death. You were no longer a valued member of society, but a pariah, an outcast. Your skills, your knowledge, your contributions, all rendered worthless by the mere accusation. Think about it. Your worth suddenly and violently diminished based on suspicion only. This loss of reputation trickled down to every aspect of life. Consider a woman who ran a small bakery. Her bread was legendary, the comforting aroma drawing customers from miles around. But after being accused, people feared her touch, worried that her bread was cursed, tainted with evil. The bakery shutters were forced to close, the oven grew cold, and a skill lovingly built over years became unusable. Families, especially wives and children of accused men, faced similar devastating consequences. They might be evicted from their homes, forced to beg for food, and struggle to find work. Even if the accused was later found innocent, the stigma often remained, making it impossible to rebuild their lives in the same community. They were marked, tainted by association. Some families changed their names and moved to new towns, desperately trying to escape the shadow of the accusation. And this was no guarantee of safety. The economic impact wasn't limited to individuals. Accusations could cripple entire communities. Suspicion bred mistrust, and trade slowed to a standstill. Farmers feared selling their crops, merchants worried about buying goods, and even simple acts of charity became fraught with fear. Think of the village, once vibrant and cooperative, now paralyzed by terror, slowly starving as suspicion festered. And it wasn't just about money, though it's easy to measure the loss that way. It was about the disruption of social bonds, the erosion of trust, and the creation of a climate of fear where neighbors turned against each other. Imagine the quiet desperation as the food stores diminished, and as people looked at each other with distrust and starvation gnawed at them and their children. Moreover, the confiscation of property was a common practice, regardless of guilt or innocence. Homes, land, livestock, and personal belongings were seized by the authorities, supposedly to cover the costs of imprisonment and trial, but often simply as an act of plunder. This left families utterly destitute, stripped of everything they owned. Even if the accused was later exonerated, the property was rarely returned. In practical terms, the confiscation of property made it nearly impossible to start over. Where would the accused or their family live and work? How would they feed themselves? Beyond the immediate loss of income and property, the long-term consequences could be even more devastating. Children of accused witches were often denied opportunities for education or apprenticeships. They were shunned by potential employers and faced limited prospects for marriage. The stigma followed them throughout their lives, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and marginalization. And it was worse in fact than that. There was the possibility of later accusation based on nothing more than this link to prior accusation. Imagine having to live with the possibility that even though you were born innocent, that the stigma of what your parent or relation went through would fall upon you. And what about the women? The social consequences were catastrophic. In a world where a woman's worth was often tied to her reputation and her ability to marry, an accusation of witchcraft could ruin her chances of finding a husband. She might be forced to live as a dependent on relatives, subject to their charity and their judgment. She had no other recourse, and the accusation could also leave them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. With no resources and no social support, some women were forced into prostitution or other desperate measures to survive. But it's important to remember that this wasn't just about the economic and social consequences. It was about the psychological toll, the constant fear, the crushing sense of isolation, and the erosion of self-worth. Imagine living in a state of perpetual anxiety, knowing that any action, any word, could be misinterpreted and used against you. Imagine watching your family suffer, knowing that you were the cause, even if you were innocent. The mental burden was immense, and many victims never fully recovered, even after being acquitted. The constant fear of renewed accusation shadowed them until their death. And that's really the tragedy, isn't it? Even if you somehow survived the trial, even if you managed to escape execution, the damage was done. The community had turned against you, your livelihood was gone, and your reputation was in tatters. You were left with nothing but the clothes on your back and the memory of a life that was no more. The loss of reputation and livelihood wasn't just a side effect of the witch trials, it was a central mechanism of control, a way to silence dissent, punish non-conformity, and maintain social order through fear and destitution. It was the slow, agonizing ruin of everything you held dear, a destruction that lingered long after the flames of the pyre had died down, the gallows been taken down, and the courts forgotten what had been done. The trial, oh the trial. Imagine it not as a solemn quest for truth, but as a public spectacle, a macabre form of entertainment. It was less about justice and more about reaffirming the community's fears, solidifying its beliefs, and perhaps most insidiously, providing a thrilling drama to break the monotony of daily life. Picture a scene unfolding in the town square or the local church. Buildings often doubled as makeshift courthouses. The air is thick with anticipation, a nervous excitement humming through the crowd. People traveled for miles, some driven by genuine concern, others by morbid curiosity, all eager to witness the downfall of someone accused of consorting with the devil. The accused, our poor, unfortunate soul, is brought forth, often shackled and disheveled, their appearance already contributing to the perception of guilt. They are positioned centrally, exposed to the judging eyes of everyone present. There is no escaping the gaze, the whispers, the outright stares filled with a mixture of fear, suspicion, and a strange sense of superiority. The judges, typically local magistrates, ministers, or prominent members of the community, are seated formally, conveying an air of authority. But beneath the facade of impartiality often lies a deep-seated prejudice, a predetermined belief in the guilt of the accused. Remember, they are products of their time, steeped in superstition and religious dogma. They are not necessarily malicious, but they are operating within a framework that is fundamentally flawed. The proceedings begin with a formal reading of the charges. The accusations, often fantastical and absurd, are laid bare for all to hear. Claims of causing illness, blighting crops, or engaging in acts of unimaginable wickedness fill the air, painting a vivid picture of the accused as a dangerous and malevolent force. The prosecution, led by a zealous accuser or a self-proclaimed expert in witchcraft, presents its evidence. This evidence, however, is rarely based on concrete facts or verifiable observations. Instead, it relies heavily on hearsay, speculation, and the testimonies of witnesses, many of whom are driven by personal vendettas, fear, or even the desire for attention. Think about the witnesses. Some might be genuinely convinced of the accused's guilt, their minds twisted by superstition and fear. Others might be coerced into providing false testimony, pressured by the community, or even threatened with accusations themselves. Still others might simply be seeking to settle old scores, using the trial as an opportunity to ruin their enemies. Spectral evidence plays a prominent role. This refers to the supposed ability of the accuser to see the spirit of the accused tormenting them, even when the accused is physically present in the courtroom. Imagine the power dynamic at play. The accuser, feigning fits and convulsions, claims to be attacked by the invisible presence of the accused, swaying the emotions of the crowd and further cementing the perception of guilt. It was theatre, pure and simple, and incredibly effective in a time when people readily believed in the unseen world. The accused is given an opportunity to defend themselves, but their chances of success are slim. They are often denied legal representation, forced to navigate the complex legal proceedings alone. Their words are twisted, their motives questioned, and their character assassinated. Anything they say can and will be used against them. If they deny the charges, they are seen as defiant and unrepentant, further proof of their connection to the devil. If they confess, even under duress, their guilt is confirmed and they face the consequences. It's a catch-22, a no-win situation designed to break their spirit and extract a confession, regardless of the truth. The community's reaction is palpable. The crowd roars with approval at damning testimony, gasping in horror at accusations of witchcraft. They are active participants in the drama, their emotions fueling the spectacle. Their collective fear and judgment create an atmosphere of intense pressure, making it almost impossible for the accused to maintain their innocence. The trial is not a search for truth, but a performance, a ritual designed to cleanse the community of perceived evil. The accused is merely a prop in this drama, their fate determined long before the proceedings even begin. The outcome, sadly, is often preordained. The weight of the community's fear, prejudice, and superstition crushes the accused, leaving them with little hope of escape. It was a horrifying period in human history, where fear reigned supreme and justice was a mere illusion. A constant hum of voices, a buzz of excitement, the heavy thud of the gavel, all leading to a terrible conclusion. The gavel falls, a sound so absolute, so final, that it echoes not just through the courtroom but through your very soul. Guilty. The word hangs in the air, thick and heavy, like a shroud. It's more than just a verdict. It's the death of everything you knew, everything you were. The crowd, the baying crowd. They erupt, a cacophony of jeers, shouts, and righteous indignation. Their eyes are on you, burning with hatred and fear, a collective judgment that strips you bare. You're no longer a person, you're a witch, an embodiment of evil, a threat to their very existence. The guards seize you, their grip rough and unforgiving. It's a violation, a physical manifestation of the community's rejection. You're dragged, stumbling, back to the jail cell, the cheers and condemnations fading behind you, replaced by the chilling silence of your impending doom. The jail, it's changed. Before it was a place of fear, of uncertainty. Now, it's a tomb. The cold stone walls seem to press in closer, suffocating you. The darkness is deeper, the silence more profound. Even the rats seem to sense the shift. They're skittering a macabre dance around your feet. There's no comfort to be found. The other prisoners, those who once offered furtive glances of sympathy, now avert their eyes. You are untouchable, tainted, a pariah even amongst the condemned. Loneliness, a constant companion throughout this ordeal, now becomes a crushing weight, isolating you in your final hours. The days blur, time loses all meaning. You exist in a twilight state, caught between the world of the living and the shadow of death. Food, when it comes, is tasteless, unappetizing. Sleep offers no respite, only nightmares that replay the trial, the accusations, the faces of your accusers contorted in hatred. Your thoughts are a maelstrom. Questions swirl endlessly. Why? What did you do to deserve this? Was it a misunderstanding, a twisted interpretation of your actions? Or was it something more sinister, malice, envy, or simply the need for a scapegoat in a community consumed by fear? Memories flicker, of your children, their laughter, their small hands clutching yours, of your spouse, the warmth of their embrace, the shared dreams now shattered, of friends, neighbors, the community you once belonged to, now turned against you with such fervor. doubt creeps in. Is there a chance? A last-minute reprieve? A voice of reason? A flicker of humanity? In this sea of madness, you cling to it, a fragile hope against overwhelming despair. But deep down you know the truth. The wheels are in motion. Your fate is sealed. The weight of it all is immense. The injustice, the fear, the crushing knowledge of your impending death. It threatens to break you, to shatter your spirit completely. Yet, something within you refuses to yield. A flicker of defiance, a stubborn refusal to let them win completely. You search for strength, for solace, in the fragments of your faith. You pray, not for salvation, but for the strength to face what's coming with dignity, with courage. You remember the teachings of your childhood, the stories of resilience, of faith in the face of adversity. The world outside, you hear it, the distant sounds of the community going about their lives, oblivious to your impending execution. It's a stark reminder of the absurdity of it all, the disconnect between the reality of your situation and the mundane normalcy of the world outside. Your thoughts turn to your family. What will become of them? Will they be ostracized, forever branded by your alleged crimes? Will they be able to rebuild their lives, to escape the shadow of your condemnation? You pray for their strength, their resilience, their ability to find peace in a world that has turned so cruel. The injustice gnaws at you, the lies, the manipulation, the blatant disregard for truth. It's a wound that will never heal, a scar that will remain etched on your soul. You yearn to shout, to scream, to proclaim your innocence to the world, but your voice is silenced, your words meaningless against the tide of fear and superstition. Acceptance comes slowly, painfully, a gradual resignation to the inevitable. You make peace with your fate, not because you believe it to be just, but because you have no other choice. You find a strange sense of calm in surrendering, in letting go of the fight. You focus on the present moment, on the simple act of breathing. You try to find beauty in the darkness, to appreciate the small comforts that remain, the warmth of a blanket, the taste of water, the flicker of a candle flame. You remember the good moments, the moments of joy, of love, of connection. You cherish them, holding them close like precious jewels. They are your legacy, your testament to a life well lived, despite the injustice that now threatens to define it. Fear remains, a constant undercurrent of dread, but it no longer controls you. You have faced it, acknowledged it, and found a way to live with it. You have found strength in the face of unimaginable adversity, a strength that transcends the physical, a strength that resides in the very core of your being. You are not a witch, you are a survivor, a victim of circumstance, of fear, of a community consumed by madness. But you are not broken. Your spirit remains intact, unbowed, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. As the final night approaches, a strange sense of peace settles over you. You have done what you can. You have fought for your life, for your truth. Now it is time to let go, to surrender to the inevitable. You close your eyes and you pray, not for a miracle, not for salvation, but for the strength to face the dawn with courage, with dignity, with the unwavering belief that even in death, your spirit will endure. And even though everyone now believes you are a witch, you will leave this world knowing that you are not, and that is all that matters. Tonight is different. Tonight the cold isn't just biting at your exposed skin, it's settling into your bones, seeping into your marrow. The dampness of the stone floor isn't just unpleasant, it's a herald of the grave. You've had nights in this cell before, nights of gnawing hunger, of shivering fits, of the endless, circling thoughts that claw at your sanity. But tonight, there's a weight to the silence, a finality in the air. You know tomorrow won't bring another sunrise seen through the grimy bars of this window. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, yes, but you won't be here to witness it. The other women who shared this space, they wept, they railed, they cursed the judges, the accusers, the twisted system that condemned them. You've exhausted those emotions. There's nothing left but a hollow ache, a quiet acceptance. It's not courage, No, it's resignation. The fight has been beaten out of you. The hope has withered and died. You are a husk, a shell, waiting for the inevitable. Do you remember the taste of ripe berries, warm from the summer sun? The feel of your child's hand, small and trusting, nestled in yours? The sound of laughter around a crackling fire, the simple joy of shared companionship? These memories, they flicker now, like dying embers. They tease you with the life that was, the life that could have been, a life stolen, a future denied. Sleep is a fickle friend tonight. It dances just out of reach, a mocking phantom. You long for it, crave the oblivion it promises. But every time you close your eyes, the images flood back. The accusing faces, the distorted testimonies, the judge's cold, condemning stare. You try to pray, but the words feel empty, hollow. Has God abandoned you? Has he turned a deaf ear to your pleas? Or is this his will? A test of faith, a cruel, incomprehensible game. Perhaps there is no God. Perhaps there is only the darkness, the void, the endless, uncaring expanse that awaits. You pull your threadbare blanket tighter around you, seeking a sliver of warmth, of comfort. It's a futile gesture. The chill seeps deeper, a premonition of the cold earth that will soon be your final resting place. You think of your family, your husband, your children. Will they remember you? Will they whisper your name in hushed tones, haunted by the shame of your accusation? Will they be ostracized, shunned, forever tainted by the shadow of your supposed crime? You hope, you desperately hope, they will find peace, that they will rebuild their lives, that they will find happiness again, even in your absence. But a darker thought intrudes. Will they be safe? Will the accusations spread like a poison to engulf them as well? Will they too be caught in the web of suspicion and fear? You wish you could warn them, protect them, shield them from the storm that's about to break. But you are powerless, helpless, a prisoner of fate. The hours crawl by, agonizingly slow. Each tick of the unseen clock is a hammer blow, driving home the reality of your impending doom. You listen, you strain to hear some sign of life outside the cell, a footstep, a voice, anything to break the oppressive silence. But there is nothing, only the rustling of rats, the creaking of the old wooden door, the echo of your own ragged breath. You imagine the crowd gathering, the curious faces, the condemning glares, the whispers and jeers. You imagine the gallows, the rough rope, the suffocating darkness, the fear. It rises again, a choking wave. You fight it back, clinging to the remnants of your shattered composure. You will not give them the satisfaction. You will not break. You will face your death with dignity, even if it's the only thing they haven't taken from you. But the fear is persistent, insidious. It worms its way into your thoughts, painting vivid pictures of the pain, the humiliation, the final terrifying moments. You close your eyes again, forcing yourself to breathe deeply. Slowly, you try to focus on the good memories, the happy moments, the love that you shared. You remember your wedding day, the sunshine, the flowers, the joyous faces of your friends and family. You remember the birth of your first child, the overwhelming rush of love, the miracle of new life. You remember the simple pleasures, the smell of freshly baked bread, the warmth of a summer rain, the beauty of a sunset. These memories, they are a shield against the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of death, life had meaning, life had beauty, life had love. You cling to these memories, holding them close, like precious jewels. They are your treasures now, the only things you can take with you into the unknown. As the first faint light of dawn begins to seep through the bars of the window, you find a strange sense of peace settling over you. It's not happiness, it's not joy, but it's something akin to acceptance. You are ready. As ready as you will ever be. You have faced your accusers. You have endured their lies. You have suffered their cruelty. Now it is time to face your fate. You close your eyes one last time and whisper a silent prayer, not for salvation, not for mercy, but for strength, for courage, for the ability to face the darkness with dignity and grace. And then you wait. You wait for the footsteps. You wait for the key to turn in the lock. You wait for the inevitable. The dawn is breaking. Your time has come. All right, settle in, friends. Let's talk about the walk, the procession to the gallows. It's not a pleasant stroll, obviously. Imagine you're stepping out of that jail cell, maybe for the first time in weeks, months even. The air, it's gonna hit you hard. Musty stone replaced by, well, whatever the town smells like on any given day. Probably not roses, let's be honest. And light, blinding light. After being cooped up in the dimness, your eyes are screaming. You squint, try to focus, but all you see at first is a blurry mass of faces, hundreds of them, maybe more, all staring, all judging. This isn't a private affair, this is theatre. Public humiliation, carefully staged. They want everyone to see, to witness justice being done, to be reminded of what happens when you step out of line, when you defy the accepted order. You're probably bound, hands tied, maybe chained, a rope around your neck, held by the executioner or a guard. Just a constant chilling reminder of what's coming. Every step you take, that rope is there, a heavy weight, both physical and metaphorical. Maybe they put you on a cart, a slow, rickety thing pulled by a tired horse. It's not about comfort, is it? It's about making sure everyone gets a good look, like an awful parade, but you are the centerpiece. The crowd, it's a mixed bag. Some are silent, almost awed. Perhaps they genuinely believe in what's happening. They think they're seeing evil vanquished, good triumphing. Others are openly hostile, shouting insults, throwing things, rocks, mud, rotten vegetables, anything they can get their hands on. They want you to feel their anger, their fear. They want you to know you're not welcome. And then there are the children. That's got to be the worst. Innocent faces watching this spectacle of death. What lessons are they learning? What kind of world are they growing up in? Are they being told that what they are seeing is just? Are they questioning it, or are they simply following their parents? The noise, it's a cacophony. Shouts, jeers, whispers. Maybe a religious hymn being sung by some of the more pious onlookers, or more likely a chant from the town drunk and his equally drunk friends, all blending together into a horrible symphony of condemnation. You try to block it out, to focus on something, anything else. The sky, the trees, the feel of the rough ground beneath your feet. But it's hard, so hard. Your family, maybe they're there, in the crowd, trying to catch your eye. A silent plea for forgiveness, for understanding. Or maybe they're not. Maybe they couldn't bear to watch. Or maybe they've turned against you too. The fear of guilt by association is a powerful motivator. This is it. The last time you'll see everything. The last time you'll feel the sun on your skin, the wind in your hair. The last time you'll hear the sounds of the world. Everything you've ever known, everything you've ever loved, fading away. What goes through your head in those final moments? It's impossible to know for sure. Maybe regret for the choices you've made, for the things you've done, or maybe defiance, a refusal to break, to give them the satisfaction of seeing you crumble. Maybe some hope that they are wrong and that justice will be served. Maybe fear, raw primal fear of the unknown, of what comes next. Is there anything after death, or is it just nothingness? Maybe acceptance, a quiet resignation to your fate, a sense that this is inevitable, that there's no fighting it anymore. Maybe love, thoughts of your family, your friends, memories of happier times, a desperate clinging to the good things in your life as the darkness closes in, and maybe forgiveness for yourself, for your accusers, for the world, a letting go of all the anger, all the bitterness, a final act of peace. The gallows, they loom ahead. A stark wooden structure silhouetted against the sky, a symbol of death, a destination you can no longer avoid. You climb the steps, or maybe you're helped up. Your legs are probably shaking, weak. It's hard to breathe. The platform, it's small, exposed. You feel incredibly vulnerable. All those eyes still watching, still judging. The executioner, he's there, a shadowy figure, doing his job. He places the noose around your neck, tightens it. The rope, rough against your skin. Another reminder. He asks if you have any last words. What do you say? Do you confess? Do you protest your innocence? Do you curse them all? Or do you simply remain silent? Whatever you choose, it doesn't matter. It's all just window dressing. The real decision has already been made. Your fate is sealed. The trapdoor, it's beneath your feet, waiting. The executioner, he stands ready, his hand on the lever, and then nothing. Just the drop. It's over. At least it's over for you. But for the crowd, for your family, for the world, it's just beginning. All right, let's talk about the end. The hanging itself. It's not pretty. No matter how you try to dress it up in the language of justice or divine retribution, it boils down to a horrifically physical act. Think about it from their perspective. Standing on that platform, the noose, that thick rope, rough against their skin as it's placed around their neck. It's a tangible thing, no longer just a symbol, no longer just a word whispered in fear. It's there, pressing against their throat, a constant reminder of what's about to happen. And the smell, that's something people probably don't think about. The smell of the rope itself, hemp, maybe a little musty from disuse. The smell of the crowd, a mixture of sweat, excitement, and maybe even fear. The smell of the gallows itself, old wood, maybe a hint of sawdust. It all combines into this suffocating sensory experience. Then there's the waiting, that agonizing few moments before the trapdoor is sprung. The priest might be murmuring last rites, but the sound gets distorted, lost in the roar of their own blood in their ears. Their heart is pounding, a frantic drumbeat against their ribs. Every muscle is tense, coiled like a spring ready to snap. And then, the drop. This is where the physical agony really begins. The ideal hanging, supposedly, was designed to cause instantaneous death, a broken neck, severing the spinal cord. But the ideal and the reality, well, they rarely met. More often than not, the drop was too short, or the noose wasn't properly positioned. So instead of a clean break, there was strangulation. Imagine the pressure, the full weight of your body, suddenly suspended by your neck, the rope digging into your flesh, cutting off your airway, the intense burning pain as your windpipe is crushed. Your lungs scream for air. It's the most primal, basic need, and it's being denied. You gasp, you choke, you try to pull away, but there's nothing to grab onto, nowhere to go. The pain is all-consuming. It radiates outwards from your neck, a searing fire that spreads through your shoulders, your chest, your head. Your vision starts to blur, to darken around the edges. Spots dance before your eyes, and then the convulsions begin. Your body, in its desperate attempt to survive, starts to spasm. Your legs kick, your arms flail, your torso twists and writhes. These aren't conscious movements. It's the body's reflexive response, a desperate fight against the inevitable. The muscles in your face contort. Your tongue swells, pushed out of your mouth. Your eyes bulge, bloodshot and wide with terror. And the sounds, the rasping gasps, the strangled coughs, the involuntary cries that escape your throat. It's a horrifying symphony of suffering. Meanwhile, the crowd is watching. Some are cheering, reveling in what they see as justice being served. Others are silent, their faces pale with a mixture of morbid fascination and revulsion. Some might even be praying, hoping for a swift end to the suffering. But for the person on the gallows, the crowd ceases to exist. There's only the pain, the suffocation, the desperate struggle for air. As time stretches on, the convulsions gradually subside. The kicking stops. The body hangs limp, swaying slightly in the breeze. But death isn't instantaneous. It can take minutes, sometimes even longer. for the life to fade completely. During that time, the brain is starved of oxygen. Neurons begin to die, consciousness fades, eventually the heart stops, the blood ceases to flow, the body goes cold, and finally there's silence. The noose has done its job, the life has been extinguished, the body is taken down, unceremoniously cut from the rope. It is a sack of meat, nothing more. In some cases, the body would be left hanging for a period of time as a warning to others, a grim reminder of the consequences of defying the community. Sometimes days would pass. The smell of death would join the other unpleasant scents on the wind. Even after being taken down, there was little respect or reverence shown. Many were denied a proper burial, their bodies dumped in unmarked graves, left to rot without even a name or a stone to mark their passing. Their earthly existence ended. Their name was likely to be forever tarnished, their spirit crushed, and then slowly they would fade from memory. Just another casualty of a time consumed by fear, suspicion, and hysteria. And then the burial. Not a grand affair, certainly not a celebrated one, more like an afterthought. The body, often still bearing the marks of torture or the rope, was typically taken down unceremoniously. No respectful washing, no gentle preparation, just taken down. The ground, already unforgiving, would be dug hastily, often just outside the town limits, a patch of earth deemed unsuitable for anything else. Think about it. Land was precious. Why waste good, arable land on someone considered a stain on the community? Someone who in their eyes had actively conspired with evil. No, these weren't burials meant to honor the deceased. They were meant to erase them, quickly, quietly, and completely. The grave itself, shallow, pathetically shallow, barely enough to cover the body, let alone deter scavenging animals. No coffin, of course. Why waste precious wood on someone deemed unworthy of even the most basic dignity? The body, wrapped perhaps in a simple shroud, or even just the clothes they died in, would be unceremoniously lowered into the pit. No prayers, maybe a mumbled curse, or a sigh of relief that the ordeal was finally over. And then the dirt. Thrown back in, clods of earth hitting the lifeless form with a dull thud. No flowers, no tokens of remembrance, just dirt. The grave, once filled, would be hastily leveled, any trace of disturbance quickly erased. Why leave a marker for others to mourn, to remember, to perhaps even question? The goal was oblivion. Complete and utter oblivion. No headstone, absolutely no headstone. An unmarked grave. Just another patch of anonymous earth, overgrown with weeds, forgotten by time. No name, no date, no indication that a human being, a life with its own hopes, dreams and fears, lay beneath. And that was it. The burial complete. The community, or what was left of it, could breathe a collective sigh of relief. The witch was gone. The evil had been purged, or so they thought. But what about the life that was buried there? The person, the individual, the human being with a story, a past and a future that was so brutally stolen. Before the accusations, before the trials, before the torment, this was someone, a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a friend, someone who laughed, who loved, who dreamed, who worried, someone who had a place in the community, a role to play, a contribution to make. Perhaps she was a healer, using her knowledge of herbs and remedies to ease the suffering of others. Perhaps she was a midwife, bringing new life into the world, offering comfort and support to expectant mothers. Perhaps she was simply a kind and gentle soul, always willing to lend a helping hand, to offer a word of encouragement, to brighten the lives of those around her. Whatever her role, whatever her story, it was now erased, buried along with her body in that unmarked grave. Her name, once spoken with respect and affection, now whispered in fear and contempt. Her memory, once cherished, now deliberately forgotten. Think about the void she left behind, the empty chair at the dinner table, the unanswered questions of her children, the aching loneliness of her spouse, the grief of her family and friends, forced to mourn in silence, afraid to speak her name, lest they too be accused of witchcraft. Her possessions, once treasured, now discarded or destroyed. Her home, once a place of warmth and comfort, now a source of fear and suspicion. Her reputation, once spotless, now forever tarnished by the stain of witchcraft. Her life, her entire existence, reduced to a single horrifying label. Witch, a label that stripped her of her humanity, erased her identity, and condemned her to oblivion. And yet, even in death, even in oblivion, her story persists, whispered in the wind, carried on the breeze, etched in the very earth that covers her unmarked grave. A story of injustice, of fear, of the destructive power of mass hysteria. A story that serves as a chilling reminder of the importance of critical thinking, of empathy, and of the need to protect the vulnerable from the tyranny of the mob. Because even though her name is forgotten, her life erased, her story is not. And as long as we remember, as long as we refuse to let her be forgotten, she will continue to speak to us, to warn us, to guide us. A silent sentinel, guarding against the darkness of ignorance and prejudice. So the next time you walk through a field, the next time you see an unmarked grave, take a moment to remember the lives that were lost, the stories that were silenced, the voices that were extinguished, and let their memory inspire you to be a force for good in the world, to stand up for what is right, and to never let fear and hatred triumph over reason and compassion. Because their lives, though tragically cut short, still have the power to make a difference, and it is our responsibility to ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain. The earth remembers, even when we forget. The witch trial might be over, the sentence carried out, but for the family left behind, the ordeal was far from finished. Imagine the weight of suspicion, the constant whispers, the sideways glances that followed them everywhere they went. You see, being related to someone accused of witchcraft, even if they were proven innocent, well, that label stuck, like tar. Their social standing, once perhaps respectable, now crumbled. Friends and neighbors, gripped by fear and suspicion, began to distance themselves. Invitations to gatherings dried up. Doors that were once open, now remained firmly shut. It was a chilling isolation, a slow and agonizing social death. Economically, the consequences could be devastating. If the accused had been the primary breadwinner, the family was plunged into immediate financial crisis. Even if that wasn't the case, their livelihood was often threatened. Local merchants, wary of being associated with witchkin, might refuse to do business with them. Potential employers would look the other way, fearing that hiring them would bring bad luck or worse, suspicion upon themselves. Farms, a common source of income, could suffer mysterious setbacks. Crops might fail, livestock might sicken and die. Was it just bad luck? Or was it the malevolent influence, the lingering curse, attributed to the executed witch now tainting the very soil they walked on? The fear was palpable, the line between natural misfortune and supernatural malice blurred. Even worse, the accusations could spread. Siblings, children, even distant relatives were now viewed with suspicion. The stain of witchcraft, you see, was considered hereditary, a flaw in the bloodline. Young women, in particular, became vulnerable. Their prospects for marriage diminished drastically. Who would want to take the risk of marrying into a family tainted by witchcraft? It was a cruel and unfair burden, limiting their future and casting a long shadow over their lives. Children, innocent and vulnerable, bore the brunt of this stigma. They were taunted and bullied by other children, ostracized and excluded from games and social activities. Their parents, fearing for their safety, might keep them home from school, further isolating them and hindering their education. The psychological impact was immense. Imagine the constant anxiety, the fear of being accused themselves, the sense of shame and guilt, even if they knew their loved one was innocent. Sleep became a luxury, haunted by nightmares of the trial, the execution, and the ever-present fear of what might come next. The family's name, once a source of pride, now became a mark of shame. Some chose to change their surnames, hoping to escape the stigma and start anew. Others, unable to bear the constant pressure, left the community altogether, seeking refuge in anonymity. But even in a new town, far away from the whispers and accusing stares, the fear lingered, a constant reminder of their past. The legal system, which had failed them so miserably, offered little recourse. There was no compensation for the wrongful accusation, no apology for the injustice. The family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, with no help and no hope of restitution. The church, often complicit in the witch trials, offered little comfort. Some ministers, swayed by popular opinion, might refuse to offer communion or other sacraments to the family. Others, fearing accusations of heresy, remained silent, unwilling to challenge the prevailing narrative. Even years, decades even, after the witch trial, the stigma could persist. Stories, embellished with each retelling, would circulate through the community, keeping the memory of the witch alive and ensuring that their family would never truly be free. It was a cruel and enduring legacy, a testament to the power of fear and the enduring consequences of injustice. Imagine trying to rebuild your life, to find love, to raise a family, knowing that your past, your family's past, could be used against you at any moment. It was a constant burden, a weight that never truly lifted. Some families, resilient and determined, managed to overcome these obstacles. They found new communities, built new lives, and reclaimed their dignity. But for many, the witch trial was a wound that never fully healed, a scar that marked them forever. The story of the witch trial victim doesn't end with their execution. It continues with the struggles of their family, their enduring hardship, and their fight for survival in a world that has turned against them. It's a story of injustice, of resilience, and of the enduring power of stigma. And it's a reminder that the consequences of fear and prejudice can extend far beyond the immediate victims, leaving a lasting impact on generations to come. Okay, so now that we've walked through what it might have actually felt like to be caught up in the witch trials, let's take a breath and try to understand the bigger picture. What were the real reasons these things happened? It's easy to just say superstition and leave it at that, but well, it's a bit more complex, isn't it? First off, think about the time period. We're talking about the 16th and 17th centuries, a time of immense social and religious upheaval. The Protestant Reformation had shaken the foundations of the Catholic Church, leading to decades of religious wars and conflicts. People were genuinely deeply scared about their souls and the fate of their eternal lives. This created a climate of intense anxiety and a need to find someone to blame when things went wrong. A bad harvest, a sick child, it couldn't just be bad luck, it had to be someone's fault. Then there's the role of the church itself. Both Catholic and Protestant churches held a firm belief in the power of the devil and his ability to influence the world. Witchcraft was seen as a direct challenge to God's authority, and therefore a threat to the entire social order. Preachers regularly warned their congregations about the dangers of witchcraft, fueling the existing fears and prejudices. They saw it as their solemn duty to warn against the devil, and they were taken very seriously. Remember, there was little to no separation of church and state in this era. These religious leaders' views held major sway, and it wasn't just religion. There were also significant social and economic factors at play. In many communities, there were deep-seated tensions between neighbors, often related to land disputes, inheritance issues, or just plain old jealousy. Accusations of witchcraft could be a convenient way to settle scores or eliminate rivals. Think about it like this: if you hated your neighbor and their cow suddenly died, wouldn't it be convenient to say they were cursed? It was a very easy accusation to make, and hard to disprove. Gender also played a huge role. The vast majority of those accused of witchcraft were women, particularly older women, widows, or those who lived on the margins of society. These women were often seen as vulnerable and easily influenced by the devil. Furthermore, traditional beliefs about female sexuality and power contributed to the fear of women who seemed independent or assertive. They were seen as troublemakers or unruly. There was a significant amount of misogyny in the accusations and trials. Another major factor was the lack of scientific understanding. People didn't understand the causes of disease, natural disasters, or mental illness. Instead, they attributed these events to supernatural forces, making witchcraft a convenient explanation for anything they couldn't comprehend. It was easier to blame a witch for a failed crop than to admit they didn't understand the weather patterns. Simple scientific explanations just weren't there yet, and this left a big void that witchcraft accusations could easily fill. Adding to this was the power of suggestion and mass hysteria. Once a few people started making accusations, others were quick to jump on the bandwagon, either out of genuine fear, a desire to gain attention, or simply to conform to the prevailing social pressure. The fear was very real and very contagious. It's like when someone yawns and suddenly everyone else starts yawning. Fear can spread just as easily. The legal systems of the time were also deeply flawed. Accused witches were often denied basic rights, such as the right to legal representation or the right to confront their accusers. Confessions were often obtained through torture or coercion, making them unreliable and untrustworthy. The whole process was stacked against the accused, making it nearly impossible for them to prove their innocence. It wasn't a fair system by any stretch of the imagination. Spectral evidence, which was used in some trials, further complicated matters. This type of evidence involved witnesses claiming to have seen the accused in a vision or dream, committing acts of witchcraft. It was incredibly difficult to challenge, as it relied solely on the subjective experiences of the witnesses. How could you prove that someone didn't appear in someone else's dream? It was essentially impossible. Finally, the witch trials often served as a way for authorities to assert their power and control over the population. By persecuting witches, they could demonstrate their commitment to maintaining order and suppressing dissent. It was a way of saying, "We're in charge, and if you step out of line, you'll be next." It was a form of social control, pure and simple. So when you put all these factors together, religious anxieties, social tensions, gender prejudices, lack of scientific understanding, flawed legal systems, and the desire for social control, you start to get a clearer picture of why these witch trials happened. It wasn't just about superstition, it was about a complex interplay of forces that created a perfect storm of fear, paranoia, and injustice. And that's a really important lesson for us today. Because even though we might think we're more enlightened now, these kinds of dynamics can still play out in different ways. It's important to be aware of them, so we can avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Okay, so imagine the scene. Not just one isolated incident, but a whole community, slowly, subtly unraveling. It doesn't start with pitchforks and torches. No, it begins with whispers, doubts, a seed of fear planted deep in fertile ground. Think about it. Your neighbor, someone you've known for years, suddenly accused of, well, something unbelievable. At first you dismiss it. Old Martha, a witch, ridiculous. But then you remember the time your cow fell ill, and Martha gave you that strange-looking herb. And the way she always seemed to know when it was going to rain. Harmless eccentricities, right. Now they feel different. That's the thing about fear, it's infectious. It spreads like wildfire, fueled by uncertainty and suspicion. One accusation becomes two become 5, and suddenly, everyone is looking at everyone else with just a little bit more scrutiny, a little more distrust. It's not that people are inherently evil. You see, it's that they're afraid of the unknown, afraid of things they can't understand. And when fear takes root, logic and reason tend to go right out the window. And it doesn't just stop at fear of witchcraft. Think about all the other anxieties that were swirling around back then. Poor harvests, disease, political instability. Life was hard, really, really hard. And when things are tough, people look for someone to blame, someone to point the finger at and say, there, that's why things are going wrong. And the more people believe, the more emboldened the accusers become. Personal vendettas, petty grievances, long-held grudges. All of a sudden, they have a legitimate outlet, a way to settle scores under the guise of righteous indignation. For the good of the community, they'll say, masking their own malice with a veneer of piety. Spectral evidence. Oh, that was some scary stuff. Imagine people going into a trance, writhing on the floor, claiming they are being attacked by the spirit of the accused. No one really knew how to prove this, but people believed it. Suddenly, everything is up for grabs. And the authorities, well, they're often just as susceptible to the hysteria as everyone else. Maybe they genuinely believe they're doing God's work, rooting out evil. Or maybe they're just trying to maintain order in a community that's spiraling out of control. Whatever the reason, they often end up fueling the flames, legitimizing the accusations and perpetuating the cycle of fear. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people are accused, the more convinced everyone becomes that there must be witches among them. The more the authorities crack down, the more desperate people become to find someone, anyone, to accuse in order to protect themselves. And the consequences? Devastating. Families torn apart. Lives ruined. Innocent people condemned to death based on nothing more than rumor, suspicion, and fear. And the worst part? It could happen to anyone. A whispered word, a misinterpreted glance, a moment of bad luck, and suddenly you're the one standing accused. And once the hysteria takes hold, it's almost impossible to stop. Dissent is silenced. Doubt is suppressed. Anyone who dares to question the narrative is immediately branded as a sympathizer, a co-conspirator, a witch themselves. It's a chilling reminder of how easily reason can be abandoned in the face of fear, how quickly communities can turn on themselves, and how devastating the consequences can be when truth is sacrificed at the altar of paranoia. And it's not just some historical anomaly, either. This kind of mass hysteria, this kind of scapegoating, it can happen anywhere, anytime, when the conditions are right. When fear takes hold, anything is possible. It's a dark chapter in our history, but one that we really, really need to remember, because the seeds of that kind of hysteria, well, they're always there, just waiting for the right moment to bloom. But even amidst the fear and the accusations, a tiny seed of doubt began to sprout. It was a fragile thing, easily dismissed, easily trampled underfoot by the prevailing hysteria, but it was there. It existed in the hushed whispers of a few brave souls, in the furrowed brows of some who witnessed the trials, in the uneasy silences that followed the most outrageous accusations. You see, even in the most fervent of times, logic and reason don't entirely disappear. They simply become harder to hear, muffled by the roar of the crowd, intimidated by the power of the accusers. These early doubters weren't necessarily convinced of anyone's innocence, mind you. The fear of witchcraft was too deeply ingrained for that. But they began to question the methods being used, the evidence being presented, the sheer intensity of the accusations. Maybe, just maybe, things weren't as simple as they seemed. One of the first cracks in the wall of consensus came from observing the accusers themselves. You see, the young women at the heart of the witch trials weren't passive victims. They were active participants, shaping the narrative, directing the accusations, and in some cases, clearly relishing the attention. Some noticed the way their fits conveniently subsided when confronted with certain individuals, or how their spectral visions seemed to align perfectly with existing grudges and rivalries within the community. Whispers began to circulate. Were these girls truly afflicted, or were they simply acting? Could they be motivated by something other than divine inspiration, perhaps envy or a desire for power? It's important to remember that questioning the accusers was incredibly risky. To cast doubt on their testimony was to cast doubt on the authority of the church and the court, to align oneself with the forces of darkness. But the whispers persisted, fueled by inconsistencies in the girls' stories, by the sheer improbability of some of their claims, and by the growing sense that something was terribly wrong. Another source of doubt arose from the blatant bias of the trials themselves. Legal procedures were routinely ignored, evidence was cherry-picked to support the accusations, and those accused were often denied the right to defend themselves. Some witnesses who dared to speak out in defense of the accused were quickly silenced, their own reputations questioned, their own safety threatened. The deck was stacked against the accused from the very beginning, and some observers recognized this injustice, even if they were afraid to speak out against it. Furthermore, the concept of spectral evidence, the idea that a witch could send their spirit to torment a victim, even while their physical body remained elsewhere, began to raise eyebrows among the more educated members of the community. How could such a thing be proven? How could anyone defend themselves against an invisible attack? While the belief in spirits and the supernatural was widespread, the use of spectral evidence as the primary basis for conviction seemed flimsy, to say the least. There were instances where accused individuals offered perfectly rational explanations for the events attributed to witchcraft, explanations that were simply dismissed out of hand. Perhaps a failed crop was due to poor weather, not a curse. Perhaps a sudden illness was caused by a known disease, not a malevolent spell. But in the climate of fear, rational explanations were often seen as further evidence of guilt, proof that the accused was trying to deceive the court and conceal their true nature. Those who questioned the narrative were often ostracized, labeled as sympathizers, or even accused of witchcraft themselves. But a few brave souls, driven by conscience or a sense of justice, refused to be silenced. They spoke out, even at great personal risk, pleading for reason, for fairness, for a more cautious approach to the accusations. These dissenting voices were crucial, even if they were ultimately drowned out by the tide of hysteria. They represented a flicker of hope in a time of darkness, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming fear, some people are willing to stand up for what they believe is right. They laid the groundwork for the eventual re-evaluation of the trials, for the eventual recognition of the injustice that had been committed. And while they couldn't save everyone, their courage paved the way for a more rational and just society in the future. It's a small comfort to know that even in the darkest of times, the seeds of reason can still take root and eventually blossom, but it's a comfort nonetheless. And so we arrive at the legacy. What remains after the trials, the hangings, the whispered accusations? How do we, centuries later, reckon with the darkness that gripped communities and led to such profound injustice? It's a heavy topic, but one we can't shy away from. You might want to make a cup of tea, or just settle in, because there's a lot to unpack. For the victims themselves, the immediate aftermath was devastating. Families were shattered, their reputations ruined, their livelihoods destroyed. Think about it, losing a loved one in such a public, shameful way. The stigma attached to witchcraft accusations lingered for generations. Imagine being the descendant of someone accused, knowing that whisper of suspicion could still follow your family name. The shame, the fear, it's hard to fathom. But slowly, painstakingly, the tide began to turn. In some communities, apologies were issued, reparations were made, though of course, nothing could truly compensate for the loss of life and liberty. These acts of contrition were important though. They were a first step toward acknowledging the wrongs that had been committed and offering some solace to the descendants of the accused. Today, memorials stand in places like Salem, Massachusetts and Trier, Germany, poignant reminders of the lives lost. Names are etched in stone, a testament to individuals who were once demonized and forgotten. Visiting these sites can be a deeply moving experience. It's a chance to pay respects, to reflect on the fragility of justice, and to vow never to repeat the mistakes of the past. But remembrance goes beyond physical memorials. It's about actively preserving the stories of the victims. Historians, researchers and writers are working to uncover the details of these trials, to understand the social and political context that fueled the hysteria, and to give voice to those who were silenced for so long. It's not always easy, you know. Records can be incomplete, biased, or even deliberately falsified. But every piece of information we uncover helps to paint a fuller, more accurate picture of what happened and why. And perhaps most importantly, we learn from history. The witch trials offer stark lessons about the dangers of mass hysteria, the abuse of power, and the importance of critical thinking. When fear takes hold, reason often goes out the window. Accusations become weapons, fueled by prejudice, envy, and personal vendettas. We see how easily societies can turn on themselves, how quickly the innocent can become scapegoats. It's so important to remember that these events weren't just isolated incidents. They were symptoms of deeper societal anxieties. Religious fervor, political instability, economic hardship, all these factors contributed to the climate of fear and suspicion that made the witch trials possible. It's a reminder that we always need to be vigilant, to challenge authority, and to protect the rights of the vulnerable. The lessons of the witch trials are particularly relevant today. In a world of misinformation and echo chambers, it's more important than ever to cultivate critical thinking skills, to question sources, to challenge assumptions, and to resist the temptation to jump to conclusions. To be wary of narratives that demonize entire groups of people, and to remember that every individual deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Think about the power of social media, for example. How quickly can rumors and accusations spread? How easily can reputations be ruined with a single tweet or post? We see echoes of the witch trials in online shaming, in cancel culture, in the spread of conspiracy theories. It's a reminder that the tools of modern technology can be used to amplify both good and evil. And then there's the issue of systemic bias. The witch trials disproportionately targeted women, particularly those who were marginalized or vulnerable. Widows, unmarried women, healers, those who challenged social norms, they were all more likely to be accused. It's a reminder that prejudice often operates on multiple levels, intersecting with gender, class, race, and other forms of social identity. We need to be aware of these biases, both conscious and unconscious, and to actively work to dismantle them. To create a society where everyone has equal opportunities and where no one is unfairly targeted because of their identity. Learning from the witch trials also means being willing to confront uncomfortable truths about our own history, to acknowledge the role that religion, politics, and social structures played in perpetuating injustice, to recognize that even well-intentioned people can be complicit in acts of oppression. It's not always easy to look in the mirror, but it's essential if we want to create a better future. The legacy of the witch trials is not just about remembering the past, it's about shaping the present and the future. It's about building a society that is more just, more equitable, and more compassionate. It's about learning from our mistakes and striving to create a world where such horrors can never happen again. It's a long process, you know, and we're still on that journey. But by remembering the victims, by learning from history, and by committing ourselves to the principles of justice and equality, we can honor their memory and build a better world for all. And maybe, just maybe, we can finally lay those restless spirits to rest.